Back here on Titans Talk, and our phone lines are open 737-7767 if you want to talk about the big win yesterday over the Colts, 25-16 in Nissan Stadium, as the Titans improved to 2-1 on the year and grabbed really the driver's seat in the AFC South. Now at 2-1, a full game up on the Texans, who nobody expects to hang around in this division for very long. And more importantly about the win yesterday is the Colts are now 0-3. I don't know if anybody saw that coming, but that is the situation Indianapolis is in. It doesn't mean they're buried 3 weeks into a 17-game season, but the Titans do have a full 2-game lead plus the win in the head-to-head advantage here early on. The big question yesterday, though, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this, is Julio Jones in the fourth quarter. We knew A.J. Brown was out. We knew the other injury situations that the Titans were dealing with yesterday. Bud Dupree on the defensive side of the ball was emergency-only situation. But Julio Jones was good to go. He was coming off a 100-yard receiving game in Seattle last week. We got our glimpse of what the 7-time Pro Bowler can be in this offense. In the first half yesterday, he had 3 catches. He had a big 4th down conversion to set up the first touchdown of the day. He seemed to be playing well. He seemed to be blocking well, as they ask, and he is capable of doing on the outside. And then all of a sudden, on the Titans' final touchdown drive early in the fourth quarter, he was just not there. The final touchdown pass, in fact, was a play in which the receivers on the field were Michael Pruitt at tight end, Chester Rogers, Racey McMath, and then in the running back position, you had Jeremy McNichols. And, of course, McNichols scored on the play. Everybody stepping up and doing a little bit more in the absence. But everybody in the stadium, including yours truly, is sitting there wondering, why isn't Julio Jones on the field? This is why you got Julio Jones, is to make sure that he is ready to help you out in this type of a situation. He's going to make that big play in the red zone. But he wasn't there. And then after the game, of course, everybody asked about that. And Mike Vrabel kind of hemmed and hawed around it, but he didn't disclose that there was an injury. That hasn't happened. And he also didn't say that there was any particular reason behind it. It was more just kind of, we made the decision that's in the best interest of the football team, and we felt it was best for Julio to not be out there in some of those situations as we tried to close out that game. Yes, they were trying to run the football a lot at that time, but Julio's a pretty good blocker, frankly, when they're trying to run the football. And they did have to throw the football at times. Why wasn't he on the field? For those plays. Those answers really didn't come in a shorter than usual Vrabel press conference after a game that they won. And so we tried again today, and Vrabel essentially tamped down all the conspiracy theorists, I guess you would say, and just said, look, for lack of a better term, it was load management. He said he's not going to get into the bumps and bruises or the nicks and the knacks that guys have, but you would assume that Julio Jones is not exactly 100%. He may be close, but not exactly 100%. Where they were in the game, I think he thought that they could close it out without him out there. And with A.J. Brown especially down, we learned today from an ESPN report that it is indeed a strained hamstring and that he's likely week to week to come back, which may mean you not see him this weekend in New York against the Jets, or maybe even next week in Jacksonville against the Jaguars. With that being the case, you'd obviously like Julio Jones to be available. And so maybe they were just taking it cautiously. He did try to tamp down those conspiracy theorists who thought that maybe this means there's a rift between Vrabel and Jones. Maybe that's why something's going on there. Maybe it was punishment for something he did. Maybe they weren't happy with his overall performance. He basically said none of that is going on, and that it was just kind of the course of a decision to make sure the best interest of an individual player that helps the team in a meaningful way was considered in terms of his safety and health and what it means for a long football season. All that's well and good, and hopefully that means we'll see Jones and a lot of Jones this weekend in New York. But I do think as a Titans fan, you have to sit out there and wonder exactly what's up in that situation, because they traded to bring this guy in. He was supposed to be the guy that got this offense to that next level, to take it from really good to absolutely elite. He was really good last week in Seattle. But in week one and then yesterday coming out, it wasn't the same with Julio Jones. So you still need to see that on a consistent basis, and you need to see it with all the other pieces on the field. But when he's not there in that game, especially when A.J. Brown isn't ready to go himself, I think you have to have a question of what's going on there. Now, there's no reason to not take Mike Vrabel at his word at what he said today, but I do think it's a situation worth monitoring as we get set for this game this weekend and as we move forward. What are your thoughts on what you saw yesterday from the Titans as a whole, or this Julio Jones situation in particular? 737-7767, the number. And we go to the phones now and say hello to Trey. Trey, good evening and welcome to Titans Talk.
Hey, what's going on, man? I just want to say, do you think it's an ego problem with Mike Vrabel? Like, all these star athletes come to the team, like Bud Dupree, Julio Jones, and it's like he's not starting these guys. He's rather putting them on the bench and letting backups come in. Is it an ego thing with this guy?
I don't think it is. I mean, first off, I think the Bud Dupree situation is very different. He's like 8 months off of a torn ACL, coming back into preseason and trying to play. I think it's just the wear and tear of trying to get back from that, which is a difficult injury. So to me, the whole Dupree situation is just an injury thing. I thought it was bizarre he was available yesterday in an emergency situation, but not deemed good enough to be able to go full go for the entire game unless he absolutely had to. I think that's a bit of a bizarre situation, but I don't think they're trying to hold Bud Dupree out. I think they want him to be 100% and go. The Jones situation is just weird because he was 100% and went early in the game and was productive. He had 3 catches for 47 yards, and then all of a sudden with the game seemingly on the line in the fourth quarter. Now they had the lead. They were in control, but the game was very much still in doubt, and all of a sudden he's not out there, even on critical plays. That's what raised everybody's eyebrows. I don't think it's an ego situation. I mean, if anything, Vrabel was the type of guy that kind of played without an ego in his career. I do think the one thing that may be there, though, is he's got that New England in him, you know, Trey? Yeah. And the Patriots always believed that no matter who you are, if we take you out and plug the next guy in, we're still going to win. And so that is the thing, that if there is something there where they don't think he was blocking as hard as he needed to, or, you know, whatever, I absolutely think that Mike Vrabel's willing to make an example of even a star player to make the point to the other 52 guys on the roster. Now, whether that's the situation or not, I don't know. Again, I'm taking him at his word until we have a reason to think otherwise in the situation, but it is certainly something to think about as we move forward.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Trey. We appreciate the call. Let's move on now. Go to Nate. Nate, what's up? How are you? Welcome to Titans Talk.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good.
Yeah, that was a big win yesterday. I'm gonna tell you, man, that quarterback on those 2 runs where he didn't slide, man. I mean, I'm telling you that they got my respect. But on the whole Julio thing, man, Mike Vrabel come from that whole Patriots way, ain't got time to be dealing with no diva type, stuff. And I don't really think it's gonna work out over the course of the season, because if you look back, like in Atlanta, it was the same thing with Julio, man. And I mean, you got to be able to depend on guys, man. This was a division game coming down the stretch, and you're not in the game, man. And with AJ, I don't know what's going on with him. So, but my question for you tonight is, man, do you think it's going to work out over the course of the whole season between Mike Vrabel and Julio? Because it seems like he's tired already of hearing questions about it. So I just want to hear your insight. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet. I think Mike Vrabel's tired of hearing every question from us in the media. Honestly, he's not a fan of dealing with us on most days. I can tell you that. So I'm sure he's disappointed about dealing with this situation as well. I will say this. I think they'll work it out, because I think the biggest thing Julio Jones wants at this point of his career, he's going to Canton. The numbers speak for themselves. Whatever he does here in Tennessee won't diminish what he did in the first 10 years of his career. He is a Hall of Fame receiver. The thing that he's missing is that postseason success. He got to a Super Bowl but lost. He didn't have a ton of other big-time postseason success in Atlanta. Can he get that postseason success on this back end of his career? Can he win that Super Bowl here in Tennessee? That's the thing I think he wants. And I think he looks at the Titans as a true contender with the type of culture that can take him there, that can give him the cherry on the top of the ice cream sundae that has been his delicious career so far. And I think he knows this is a great position for him to do that. And so I think he's willing to not have a 1,500-yard individual season if it means that the Titans go 13-4 and have home field advantage in the playoffs. I think he's willing to be that type of guy. And so I think you'll see more and more of him in that role, and I think they'll work it out. But this is interesting because at the moment you have to wonder how everything has been handled with him. He got nicked up in the preseason. There was really no work to be done in training camp or in the preseason for Julio Jones. So he walks out there in week one, and he looked like a guy, as good as he is, as talented as he is, he looked like a guy who had no preseason. There were a couple drops. There were some balls that you would expect him to come down with that he didn't come down with. It was not a vintage Julio performance. He comes back and bounces back in a huge way last week in Seattle, and you think, okay, all right, his sea legs are under him, and now we're going to see the real Julio Jones in this offense week in and week out. And I think we saw that early on Sunday again. Not every week's going to be a 130-yard game, but you saw a guy who had 3 catches for 50 yards in the first half. Some big catches in there. That's what you want to see from Julio Jones. I think you're going to see a lot more of it. The question is just what happened there in the second half. And he did get rolled up on one block there. Did he get nicked up there? Did that freak him out? Did it freak the coaching staff out? Were there some other nicks and knacks that they thought, gosh, it would be best if we can just get through this game and not risk him in any way, shape, or form, given the other injuries that we have? I think all of that is possible. But again, it's something we're going to have to watch because they didn't trade for Julio Jones to have him sitting in the fourth quarter of a Week 3 game that's essentially a tight ball game, a game that has to be won in the fourth quarter. That's not the reason they went out to get him. They got him to help them get to the next level, to make the plays that win the game. And so far, we haven't seen that. Now, I think most people who are around the team, who cover the team, still believe we're going to see that, and we're going to see it a lot this season. But it hasn't happened yet. And now that we're 3 weeks in and the way yesterday ended, I think it does raise some concern and at least makes you take the magnifying glass to the situation. Think about it this way. On Sunday in New York, I certainly expect Julio Jones to play. I think we all do. But when we watch the game on Sunday, aren't you going to be watching the interaction between Mike Vrabel and Julio Jones just a little bit more? Aren't you going to be watching the body language of Jones on and off the field? You know, if a few different passes don't go his direction or they run the ball on 4 consecutive plays, aren't you going to spend a little bit more time looking at the body language in that situation, given what just happened? That's what this situation has created. Again, I don't think there's any real reason to think, something's amiss here or something's off here or, man, he's really hurt. I don't think we have any of that. But I think you are definitely going to pay more attention to the little details now because of the way yesterday's game ended. Back to the phones we go. Say hello to Wayne. Wayne, good evening and welcome to Titans Talk.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you accepted my call. I really appreciate that. See, the thing about the Titans, they still don't have an offensive line straightened out. because you let those defensive ends and linebackers coming out and hit that quarterback like that. That's a game-season injury, and they're just not blocking right. You right there at the line, and you see who's coming on the pass rush, or the linebacker coming, know he's going to rush in, and you don't take time out to block him, knock him out of the way. Now, it's going to get worse when you meet these other teams. If you don't correct that now, they had plenty of time to do it. On the other years, I care about all these players that on that field sacrifice their bodies. And well, I care about the coaches also. But the news media here in Nashville has not said one word about Andy Reid. See if he's doing okay, something like that. This man is going to Canton too. And sooner or later, the Titans got to play the Kansas City Chiefs. So you might as well keep up with him going on with his coach and see if he's going to be ethical or whatever. So anytime something like that happens to a player or a coach, I wish Channel 5 and these other stations at least mention and give an update on the health and safety of these coaches also. But the Titans seemed like they wanted to give the game away yesterday. And I believe Julio Jones wants to do his best. If he gets the ball, you quit throwing the ball or airing it out like an airplane. If you go up for that ball up that high, you're going to be hurt. And you're just a season in the injury. So kind of he'll need to bring them balls more under control. And if he don't, he's going to hurt a lot of his receivers.
Yeah.
And that's what I seen yesterday. Because my stepson is a Titan maniac for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I know he turned over a bunch of chairs yesterday, hollered and hooping and knocked a hole in the floor in the house, stomping when he did something stupid. So
well, Wayne,
I hope you can answer.
Wayne, real quick, all that stuff's interesting, and I'll try to address it here. Real quick, what do you want a better update on from us in terms of injuries? Part of it is we don't get much of an update from the team. We certainly ask the questions, but they are very secretive about what the specific injury is, how long a guy might be out. For instance, Rashad Weaver, it is fairly well known by everybody at this point, broke his leg yesterday and is expected to miss probably 12 weeks, maybe longer than that. And we asked Mike Vrabel about it today, if it was going to be a long-term injury, and his answer was, yep, that's all we got. So he didn't tell us that it's a broken leg. He didn't tell us that it's going to be 3 weeks or longer, or 3 months or longer, or anything like that. That was the official information we got from the team. So it's a tricky process, let me just tell you that. But what more would you like to know? Because I'll try to do my best to answer it.
Well, see, when these announcers get on TV right before they call games or right in halftime, they make an honest statement of what's the update on what's going on. And I can't see why the local news media can't get that information, because everybody's not watching the game. But when they do, it's a newscast. They ought to be able to get an update on what's going on. I mean, it's not like everybody's a Titans fan. We got too many people out of town moving here. But still, people would like to get an update of what's going on. If the announcers know, and some of those announcers, they get on Channel 5, they're being discriminatory. Some of those announcers just don't like the Titans. And every time they do something, they run down the Titans. That's the kind of people they don't need up there. If you're going to be biased, you don't need to be up there calling no game. And that's period, you know, and that's what Phil Simms is bad about doing. And these other people, the Tom Brady fanatics, you don't need to be up there being biased, because they stopped making them, letting them do the calls and analysis, because it got so bad at it, people got upset about it.
Okay.
So, but I just want to know what's going on with Andy Reid, and because his son has been in a lot of health problems too, and it just deserves to be updated and get show respect, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Wayne. We appreciate the call. Look, I mean, most of us, whether it's the network broadcast or a local broadcast or local affiliate, get the same information. It comes from the teams. and they give you stuff during the game. Like yesterday when A.J. Brown went out, we got an update that he had a hamstring injury and that he was questionable to return. Then later that was downgraded to out in the second half, and obviously he didn't return. Now, today you get an ESPN report that comes out that says he's week to week with this strained hamstring. That's about as detailed as we've got in terms of what that's going to look like. We talked about the Rashad Weaver incident and his injury and what that probably means long term, but others we just don't know. I mean, there is no injury diagnosis when it comes to Julio Jones right now. Now, my guess is he's not 100%, whether that be from the preseason injury he had or a nick that he got in the first couple of weeks or even a knack that he got yesterday in the game. It could be any of those things. It could be all of those things. But we don't have an official injury diagnosis for Jones at this point. Now, maybe on Wednesday, something will be on the injury report. They've got to provide that to us. But at the moment, we don't know anything about it. And so we will continue to monitor those situations, and we'll try to keep you updated as much as humanly possible when it comes to that. I think this situation with Jones and Vrabel, it will work itself out. This Titans offense will work itself out as well if they can all get healthy and get on the field at the same time. But the point about the offensive line is fair. I thought they actually played probably their best game yesterday. They allowed one very bad sack, seemingly on a miscommunication on the right side on a blitz. But that was the only sack of the day yesterday. So that was an improvement from the first couple of weeks. Taylor Lewan played, obviously, his best game of the year. Roger Saffold, Ben Jones continued to play well. So I think the offensive line's coming together a little bit more. That is a positive, because that's a pretty good front on the other side that the Colts have. And the Titans were able to protect Tannehill for the most part, and they were able to run the ball. Again, no big home run or heavy hitters, but they were able to run the ball consistently at 3 and 4 and 5 yards a pop throughout the course of the game with Derrick Henry. Got 180 total yards on the ground. That's pretty effective in the National Football League, and that's how you win games. So I give them credit. Yesterday I thought it was their best performance, and they've got a couple more weeks here where they really should be able to gel together against teams that they should beat, frankly, the next 2 weeks before they get into the heart of the schedule. Our phone lines are open, 737-7767, the number. More of your phone calls, plus some reaction to yesterday's game. When we come back, this is Titans Talk on News Channel 5+.